Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube video. For today's episode, we have two guests on from what was once Make the Padres Great Again, now Padres Hot Tub Podcast. We have Craig and John from the show. And so today we're going to be talking a little bit about Freddie Freeman. And usually we start with Chase, but John, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on the Padres potentially signing Freddie Freeman? And the big question I have is this the dream move that the Padres can make? Is this the best possible move that they can make once this lockout ends?
I mean, the best possible move they could make would be to trade for like Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout or something like that, which sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but is also exactly as realistic as Freddie Freeman signing with the San Diego Padres. Like, I understand his kid loves Fernando Tatis Jr. Like, so does every kid. That's fine. That doesn't mean that everyone wants to sign with the Padres. Freddie Freeman, it basically makes Eric Hosmer like money. Like he just got off a contract where he was making $22 million a year. He just led a team to the World Series. He's going to make even more than that. He's going to make $25-30 million a year for the next 4, 5, 6 years, however long he wants. He'll probably get it in Atlanta. He'll probably eventually get his jersey retired as a Brave. He'll probably eventually go into the Hall of Fame, and all of that is awesome. I don't understand the where people think that there's a world in which like Eric Hosmer exists. He's on the Padres with an untradeable, unsinkable Titanic-like contract, and they're also going to sign first baseman Freddie Freeman. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. I love Freddie Freeman. I'd love for him to be a San Diego Padre, but like, I'd love for Mike Trout to be on the Padres too. Not going to happen.
So does that mean I go next? Is that if I remember here on the pregame meet? Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right. Well, John and I occasionally disagree. We often agree or come at things from a slightly different angle. I will co-sign on everything that Mr. Gennaro said. It's not going to happen. It's completely unrealistic. It's a pipe dream. But I'll take it a step further, if you don't mind. Wouldn't be the dream signing for me. And first things first, you have to trade Eric Hosmer. So you can't do both. So first, tell me how we traded Eric Hosmer. And did we what did we have to do to get through that gauntlet to get Eric Hosmer off the team? That would be a gigantic plus for the San Diego Padres, for Eric Hosmer to be off the team. But then, what was the mistake we made? It was buying a first baseman at the top of the market and signing him to a gigantic big money deal. First base is a position you can fill on the cheap. First base is the running back of baseball. It's a spot you should utilize as a value position. And Freddie Freeman's 32. So signing 32-year-old first basemen to 5-6 year big money contracts. I mean, hey, ask the Angels how that went. They got the greatest. They got a Hall of Famer, and that was a lose deal that helped sink the franchise. Freddie Freeman ain't Albert Pujols. Albert Pujols going to Hall of Fame, first ballot, bing. Freddie Freeman, we'll see. He's a really good player, but I don't want us to go that direction at all. I want us to get cheaper. I want us to get more flexible. I don't want us to be cheap like reduced payroll. I want us to be flexible and nimble, not have everyone making $20 million. And as such, I'm happy that this fantasy world doesn't exist, that Freddie Freeman comes to us.
Yeah, dream signing. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a dream signing. I think it'd be a good signing considering the state of first base right now. I think Craig said it best, though. I think, Matt and Chase also were kind of in favor of I like the idea of adding Josh Bell to a trade. I like the idea of getting a cheap first baseman also, someone that could, because remember, we don't need somebody that could that's going to be a superstar such as Freddie Freeman. We need someone who's going to hit 25, 30 home runs and provide a solid defense, which Eric Hosmer absolutely does not provide for us. We've seen Eric Hosmer, we need a first baseman who can bail out Jake Cronenworth and Fernando of those big time errant throws, especially Fernando, who committed 18 errors. I'd say probably a good 8 of those could have been saved by a solid first baseman. Manny Machado was not the type to make 14 errors. He made 14 this year, and a couple of those also could have been saved by Eric Hosmer. I mean, you look at the way that some of our defensive players look at Eric Hosmer after a play, it's like they're shocked that MLB caliber first baseman can't make the play. I mean, everyone's seen Jake Cronenworth and Ha-seong Kim's reactions, and they're priceless. And I think we all have similar reactions. With that being said, I mean, there's been a lot of first basemen kind of linked to the Padres. I talked about Josh Bell. There's been Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman. I've seen Luke Voigt recently, who I think would slot in better as a DH. I've seen people say Kyle Schwarber could slot in as a first baseman. I don't know how I feel about that, but Freddie Freeman at his age, at $30 million, that's going to be a deal that's not worth it after like 2 or 3 years. That's the reality of it. I think we've talked about it before. I think Chase said that, defensively, we think he will take a step down. Maybe not offensively, but everything is going to, with age comes decline. And after 2 or 3 years, that deal won't look very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying. Especially when we signed Eric Hosmer, it's never a big signing. You sign him off a career year high, 7 years, just didn't look good all around. But in a fantasy world, if we did get rid of Eric Hosmer, I wouldn't sign Freddie Freeman to replace him. I would probably move Cronenworth or put Will Myers back at first when he was an all-star. He would be completely healthy. You'd probably get a little bit added weight, a little bit more power out of him because 2016 was the year that he almost went 30-30. You move Cronenworth over and you let Ha-seong Kim finally get a chance in the MLB, let him grow, let him get the reps that he needs to, because you see these guys coming over from Japan and Korea, it takes them a couple years to finally develop, and they can only develop with reps. And with the way that Ha-seong Kim was kind of just, you'll play every third day, or if not, you'll be the first guy off the bench. You don't get to develop that way. We lost catchers that way. Mejia never developed for that reason. You can't sign these guys to like large contracts. I say large because it's not really that big, but for a Korean player coming to the U.S., it's a decent contract. For him to never really get the chance to play, I wouldn't do that. So I'd move Cronenworth or Myers to first, and then you can figure out the outfield later. But I'm not the biggest fan of signing Freddie Freeman. You guys mentioned it. You're signing him at 32. He's kind of past his prime. You're signing him for $30 million. So you're basically, okay, if you sign Eric Hosmer, you're just adding another Eric Hosmer-sized contract 2 to 3 years down the road, like Isaac was saying. So I'm good.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because you look at it just from, okay, how does the roster look? The roster definitely looks a lot better with Freddie Freeman at first base opposed to Eric Hosmer. But the practicality of it, it just makes it a lot tougher. Now, one thing that Craig, you brought up is that you want the Padres to be more flexible, to not have all their guys making $20 million, where you're looking around and you're going, wow, this past season you have Will Myers and Eric Hosmer making over $20 million each, and they are not producing where you need them to produce, and they are spending, you're spending so much money on them. The big name that has been linked to the Padres so much throughout this offseason has been Nick Castellanos, and this is a guy that we feel the same way. We feel like, hey, you're buying a guy that finally hit 30 home runs last year, and you're going to spend $150 million on him right after his career year, right after his best year. Sounds a lot like Eric Hosmer. For Freddie Freeman, I think it's a little bit different in terms of, he's been out of the last, I think it was 6 years or either 5 years, he's only had 1 year where he wasn't top 10 in MVP voting. So very, very elite player. Defensively, he is miles better than Eric Hosmer. You'd have the best defensive infield, I think, if you added Freddie Freeman. So you can look at it from that sense of, okay, yeah, it's great in terms of, yeah, if you're just like making like a fantasy baseball lineup, yeah, it's awesome. But they would be in such a tough spot. If you're going to go get Freddie Freeman, you're going to have to move Will Myers and Eric Hosmer. And moving Eric Hosmer alone is already going to be extremely hard, where really the only chance I see of this being the case is if a salary floor is implemented. And we've talked about this a lot of, if you want to move a guy like Will Myers, you probably need the salary floor just because you're not going to have to part with like immense prospect capital. But I don't know. I like Freddie Freeman. Like, if you could just say, yeah, we're gonna trade Hosmer, we're gonna add Freddie Freeman, that's awesome. But it might really burn you down the road. So I don't know if it's the dream signing. And really, when you look at all these signings, I don't really know if there is a dream signing. Like, I don't know if there's a guy that I want to break the bank on if I'm the Padres. And it does feel like it feels like that's what Preller likes to do. So that's kind of where I'm a little bit nervous about this offseason. But I don't know. What do you guys think? And John, you can lead off. What do you think about like kind of comparing Freddie Freeman to almost like that Nick Castellanos type signing, where it's just like you're going and getting an aging player and you're going to have to pay him a lot? Is that something you want to avoid at all costs?
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely like to avoid aging, declining players that are probably demanding the most money they've ever been paid in their entire career. That feels like an upside down scenario that I want nothing to do with. Now, that being said, the San Diego Padres, as they are currently constructed, do not really have a left fielder, which is why people talk about Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber and people that have actually like played in the outfield, right? But like, again, this is a team that is top 5 in the, not just the league, top 5 in Major League Baseball in terms of payroll when they've never been before. They're just bleeding money. And like, bless Peter Seidler for saying that, for investing in that way and bringing in Machado and signing Tatis and even, shelling out the money for Hosmer and Myers. They may have been bad signings, but at least he was willing to sign the check, right? But they just don't have room to do another one. They're not the Yankees. They're not the Red Sox of 10 years ago. They're not these teams that they're not the Dodgers with a $2 billion. Like, the Dodgers have a $2 billion TV contract. The Padres was like a tenth of that. I think a tenth of that. Was it 200 or was it 20? Like, it may have been 1% of that. It was really small in comparison to the $2 billion one that the Dodgers signed. So there are like, the Padres are in this realm where they're competing with other guys. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever like gone out with a friend who's really rich, and like you're like saying to yourself, like, I know they're going to be ordering stuff at the table. It's going to be expensive. I hope they offer to pay at the end, because I just like, I can't live in this world. Like, that's where the Padres are right now. Like, they'll go out to dinner with the Dodgers, but they're like, man, I really hope the Dodgers are picking up this check. So they can't afford to go and sign a Castellanos, a Schwarber, a Freddie Freeman. Like, you got what you got at this point. You got Hosmer. He's not going anywhere as much as we would like. You got Myers. He's not going anywhere as much as you'd like. You got Tatis, you got Machado, and then you got the people that are still, not making a lot of money, but are contributing in good ways, like your Jake Cronenworth, your Trent Grishams, your Austin Nolas, I suppose. But yeah, the idea, and I think Dennis Lynn even shot this down in The Athletic yesterday, saying like, don't expect a big signing from the Padres this offseason. They're kind of tapped out as far as money goes. I will say, I was originally like, maybe they should, see if they can get Nick Castellanos on like a 1-year deal or whatever. But Nick Castellanos plays in my least favorite ballpark in all of baseball in Cincinnati, or did. And like, if you look at his splits, they're amazing, because at home he hit 359 and hit 23 home runs. And in the same amount, like almost the exact same amount of plate appearances away from that stupid ballpark, he hit 260 with 11 home runs. Like, that guy's going to make a lot of money based off the ballpark that he played in. And honestly, the fact that he got caught in the news a couple times in like kind of funny ways, that helped boost the value of, hey, people know his name now. But him and just about everyone else that would command a lot of money this offseason is not really going to help the Padres long term.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. And I think we've seen AJ Preller use 2 different aggressive methods to try and build his roster from 2018 until now. He started with big money free agent signings, and he laid 2 gigantic slabs down, right, in Hosmer and Machado. And one of those is great, and one of those is arguably the worst free agent signing in, 10 years, 10, 15 years. So, okay, we went that route, right? We had Will Myers and we signed him to a big money contract extension. So then Preller pivoted, and he pivoted to trading, right? He had spent 4 or 5 years building up the farm system, developing the number 1 farm system in the league, and having a few players come up to the major leagues, that were early in their development. And he started trading all those players to get established, veteran talent. So now we have Darvish, Clevenger, Musgrove, and Snell. We've got all these 4 guys that we didn't draft or develop that are fully cooked, sometimes injured, fully cooked players. And we've seeded the rest of the league with a lot of very good talent, some of which is going to come back to bite us. So I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere, but I definitely don't think the Padres can spend their way out of their current situation. They have to ride out the current situation. They have to hope that Darvish, Snell, Musgrove, etc. are better, that Clevenger comes back and is healthy, that the team improves, and hopefully that they can make one move around there that well, I mean, they got to get a left fielder. They got to figure out closer, right? There's a lot of things going on, but I don't see that we're going to put $50 million, in terms of like, we're going to get a big money signing and then we're going to do another trade and that's how we're going to fix the team. Some of it's got to come from within. Some of it's got to come from Gore, Campusano, and eventually Abrams.
Yeah, and I'm glad you guys are talking about, and shooting down Nick Castellanos, because that is honestly my biggest fear is acquiring Nick Castellanos. I think that would be like Eric Hosmer level type signing, because I mean, playing in the Great American Small Park, you're going to get a lot of I mean, it's a favorable ballpark for hitters. But with that being said, of course, it is all going to depend on Abrams, Campusano, and Gore. There's going to be your 3 main prospects that you're going to need to flourish, because those are going to be the ones that those are your cheap contracts. Those are the ones that you need to become stars, become they're like consistent contributors to the team. You need Abrams to be that Chris Taylor type player who can play second base, outfield, whatever you need. And that's who we kind of talked about. We kind of talked about Abrams as like his floor being Chris Taylor, where he's a utility player that can consistently get on base, get some hits. But that's the kind of guy that we need. But Campusano, I don't think he's going to end up being a great defensive catcher. I think he's going to be a great or a solid hitter, somebody that could hit 260, hopefully hit 25 plus bombs. Robert House is going to be another one next year. Here we're going to need to be a contributor, and Mackenzie Gore needs to be figured out real quick. I actually talked to someone who he knows Mackenzie Gore, and I had an interesting conversation with him. It was just telling me about how timid or like shy Mackenzie Gore is. Doesn't really have like a very outgoing personality, but he thinks that COVID and a mix of COVID and not being able to work with coaches is what's kind of messing with him right now. But yeah, we need those guys to be contributors. Freddie Freeman, going back to Freddie, I don't think he's going to become a Padre. I think he's going to stay a Brave. Mount Wilson, I think he's going to become a Yankee. Nick Castellanos, I don't know. Chris Bryant, I mean, that's a guy we haven't brought up that I would like. I mean, I don't know where he's going to go, but unless we get rid of Hosmer and Myers, we have no flexibility right now.
Chase, anything else you wanted to
add? You need a left fielder. I've been a big advocate for Jorge Solaire. I mean, he's going to be a little inconsistent, but he's probably one of the best options. Costs the most money, makes the most sense right now. And if you do and somehow get another left fielder, you can always throw him at DH if that comes with the CBA agreement.
Yeah, we talked about him a little while back. So before we head out of this episode, John, you looked a little shocked when Isaac brought up Chris Taylor as a
no. You don't have to remind me. You don't have to remind me. I want to explain why my eyes came flying out of my head. Isaac said CJ Abrams' floor was Chris Taylor. His floor, like, this is as bad as he might possibly be. Chris Taylor is like a 4-WAR player every year. Like he was a 5-WAR player like just a couple years ago. He was a 3-WAR player last year. Like, that is not CJ Abrams' floor. That's probably his ceiling. Like, to say that is his floor is nuts. It's nuts. Like, his floor is what's happening to Mackenzie Gore, which is like he just runs into the hurdles that prospects hit. He never gets healthy. Somehow his swing falls apart. He does the thing that one Padres prospect did where he like broke his leg celebrating a walk-off home run and was never seen from again. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong in CJ Abrams' career that would count as a floor that is significantly lower than like all-star regular playoff contributor to the starting lineup of a World Series winning team, Chris Taylor. I'm sorry. I don't mean to show up on your podcast and be rude. That was just, I felt like I was waiting for him to be like, wait, no, I got that wrong. Meant ceiling.
No, so pretty much what I think is just, of course, it comes with a prospect, just like an NFL draft prospect. There comes with a lot of hype. There comes with a lot of potential for a bust. Everyone has potential to be a bust. You're right. We've seen Mackenzie Gore. He went from being a top 10 prospect in baseball to being number 50, 52. So the reason I say floor is because although this guy went down with a leg injury, people were, I wouldn't say they were ruling him out or anything, but I definitely thought he'd drop in the rankings, and people still think he's good enough to be number five, the second best shortstop prospect in baseball. And that's like, I didn't get the chance to see him in spring training in person. My family went to go see him, and of course we've all seen clips of him, but the ability to be able to run from home to third in like 6 seconds and the ball barely being at the cutoff man by the time he's already standing on third is just, that's unbelievable. That's something Chris Taylor does not have, the speed to get there.
Like, sorry to interrupt you, but like
Oh,
me and Craig had a long conversation about actually CJ Abrams on Padres Hot Tub last night. And so I spent most of today just like reliving the conversation and trying to come up with like comps in my head. Like Chris Taylor never popped into my head. And like in reality, the comps I kept coming back to were like, I'm like, well, on the, like, if I was being generous, I would say his floor is Billy Hamilton. Like, you guys are familiar with Billy Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
Billy Hamilton can run from third base to home in the blink of an eye.
Right.
But he's like a fourth outfielder because he also can't hit. Like, he can't hit for average, he can't hit for power. He can get on base and he can cause hell. He also plays Gold Glove defense in the outfield. And like, that could be CJ Abrams. And like, that's a really generous floor. You could go one step above that and be like, he could be D Gordon. D Gordon had a couple years where he was like almost an all-star. Like, he was a 1-2 WAR a year player. That would be fine. But like, those are much more likely outcomes for CJ Abrams than like he's the next Fernando Tatis Jr.
Okay.
Because it's just, and also like the guy who ranked Abrams as like the 5th best prospect in baseball is also like the only guy who had Mackenzie Gore as like number 2 last year. Go ahead, Craig. Go ahead.
First off, I've seen these name comps somewhere familiar recently.
Look, we've been talking all day.
But all of those comps completely discount CJ Abrams' hit tool. And that's what I think is just being completely ignored when he's turned into Billy Hamilton and he's turned, literally his 80 grade speed is being held against him because now he's being compared to every bad 80 grade speed player that's come through. Well, D Gordon was really fast and he sucks. So therefore all fast people should go away. Death to fast people. It's ridiculous. CJ Abrams is 21. When he was 18, people were going, oh my God, look at this swing from the left side of the plate. Kid's 18, runs like a deer, and he swings like this. So maybe he's a 320 hitter that grows into his power and has 40 steals. And I'll go to another familiar, unfair comparison. Maybe he's Trey Turner, the other great shortstop that we traded away, who was skinny at the time, and people thought, well, yeah, he's got great defense and he's fast as hell, but he's never going to hit for power. He's a little twig. Well, at age 28, Trey Turner hit 28 home runs as a right-handed batter, playing shortstop and helping the Dodgers get as far as they did this year. So, and that's the worst trade that AJ Preller's ever made, right? I mean, is to trade all of the career of Trey Turner for Will Myers being a mediocre outfielder that we could have wasted money on the free agent market for. There's 100 Will Myers in the league, but there's very few Trey Turners. So we can name every comp in the world, and half of them are good and half of them are bad, and all of them are unfair because CJ Abrams is CJ Abrams. He is who he's going to be. He's an elite level prospect. We shouldn't, to paraphrase some of the argument we had last night, we shouldn't trade Trent Grisham just so that CJ Abrams can, at age 21, who's never played above AA, take over center field next year. We shouldn't do that, but neither should we just go, he's D Gordon. Let's let the kid play. Let's let the kid play. Let's agree we're not going to trade him. let the kid play and find out where his floor and where his ceiling goes. And I can't wait to find out. I personally, I lean toward the happier version of these things, but I understand very much from John's perspective. He is from the camp of the Padres have never actually developed anybody because, I mean, I guess you still have to say Jake Peavy, John, but the Padres haven't developed anyone because Tatis doesn't count, because Tatis is a unicorn that they caught in the wild. And you know, that, and the other guys haven't been that great. So I get your point, but come on, he's not D Gordon yet.
I do think it's so hard to like give like guys like ceilings and floors too. Cause like it's so difficult to find similar skill sets. I think the most interesting comp, and it's like a major stretch, is Trey Turner, just because like you do see like the resemblance in the tools, and especially the speed and just like kind of like the flashiness that Trey Turner plays with too. But I mean, I think every Padre fan is signing up for CJ Abrams to be Trey Turner. That would be amazing. That is best possible case scenario. So I love that as a ceiling. I think that's the best possible ceiling if you're giving them a ceiling. But it is fun to talk about some of these guys because it like you brought up, John, like, because Isaac, like, I get where you're coming from, like Chris Taylor. And I think what we've talked about a lot with Chris Taylor too, because we've talked about Abrams and Taylor together, is more of the role that we've talked about, where if you want Abrams to get called up and you don't really have a true spot for him, if he's able to learn how to play outfield, you can play him around different spots. And he does have that athletic versatility where he could do those things. But it is interesting to, like you said, a 4-WAR player as a floor. And we're super high on CJ Abrams, but I think it's a fair point. Isaac, Chase, anything else you guys want to bring up before we take off?
Oh, Craig took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, coming out of high school, both CJ Abrams and Trey Turner were very similar. If you look both at their height and weight, they're exactly the same as is right now. And they both were very underlooked because, one, they couldn't hit for power. They had the 80 grade tool speed. Though with Trey Turner, you saw there was a lot of questions on whether or not his arm was going to live up on the shortstop. And so that's one of the reasons Padres traded him, though they were also hard eyes for Will Myers after the Rookie of the Year thing. Still probably the worst mistake Preller's made, and I'm a Will Myers fan, but you can't escape that truth that you gave up on Trey Turner too early. You couldn't develop him, and you really haven't been able to develop anyone else since then. So it's kind of hard to say where anyone is.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, Craig, you guys don't know this, but Chase is probably about the biggest Will Myers fan you can find. So him saying that has tremendous value. And anyone that's listened to us for a while knows that Chase to go out there and say, yeah, Will Myers is a terrible trade is a pretty crazy statement. But with all that said, thank you, John and Craig, for coming on. If you guys have not checked out Padres Hot Tub, make sure to do so. And also, we're going to have them on for tomorrow's episode as well. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys very soon.